Welcome back to Taking a Peek. This is a bit of a different episode. We're moving on to a new style. This is our workshop. Isaac, do you want to describe what the workshop is?
So basically what we're doing today is we've written a piece, Skye and I, called Forever and Always, and it's just 10 to 15-minute pieces that we do for our workshops that we've asked local Canadian writers to submit to us, and then we review them, we analyze them and critique them, write some notes, and we're going to now read this piece and critique it, and you guys in the audience can critique it along with us, give us your opinions, give us feedback, all in the hopes to help better Canadian work as it goes out into the theatre world. My best description of it.
Absolutely. Luke is here to help us with that critique. He's got a background in film, so he understands a lot about story structure, and gives us a little bit of an outside knowledge outside of the theater world of how story's written and how it works.
Yes, thank you very much, Luke, for helping us along with this.
No worries. This is a pleasure. Glad I could be on.
Yeah, if you
All right.
are watching
Without further ado,
we'll
we'll start the read through.
Again, if you're watching, just say hi in the the live chat.
Absolutely, and feel free to comment throughout, and we will address your comments after the read through's done.
So yes, Forever and Always, written by Skye Potter and Isaac Atfield. Characters: Person 1, a nondescript lover. Person 2, nondescript lover as well. Then we have featureless humanoids, several featureless and faceless representations of unnamed characters. Throughout the performance, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata plays in its entirety. Headings denote actions and lighting that will happen simultaneous. Scene 1. After Loss. The movement of the scene is Person 1 and Person 2 slowly walk in stage left holding a green rope together. As they walk to center stage, featureless humanoids pass them by in the opposite direction, severing the rope's connection, leaving Person 1 without any rope. At 20 seconds, Person 1 falls to their knees and cries out in sorrow, while Person 2 with the green rope and the featureless humanoids continue to walk off stage. After a few seconds, Person 1 is sitting center stage on a bar stool facing the audience. Featureless humanoids bring in stools and place bar stools on either side of Person 1. Some humanoids are brought up stage and face each other. Person 1 starts to destroy the bar. Humanoids on stage run off, then back on towards Person 1 to stop them. The humanoids carry Person 1 downstage and throw them to their knees. Humanoids turn and exit stage right. The lighting of the scene is lights up on a soft blue, spotlight on Person 2. At 22 seconds, the lights black out while spotlight fades and pauses dimly on Person 2. The spotlight suddenly goes out, lights up on a hard blue on the bar scene.
Scene 2. Fearing Love. The movement of the scene. Person 2 enters upstage left and goes to check on Person 1. They get up. Person 1 looks at Person 2 and smiles. They get up and walk in a circle around the stage, talking. They laugh. When they reach the end of the circle, Person 2 seems offended. Person 2 moves to stage left. A bar stool is dramatically placed on stage right. Person 1 goes to the stool and mimes taking a drink, then sits down. The humanoids set up a table and chairs, center stage. Person 1 looks to stage left. Person 1 jumps out of their seat. They run to Person 2 and bring them to the table. They sit and talk. Person 2 throws a drink in Person 1's face. Person 1 returns to the bar to clean up while Person 2 returns to their space. The humanoids clear the table and bring out a boat. Person 1 and 2 saunter around the stage. They stumble into each other, and Person 1 takes them to the boat. Person 1 gets insulted and jumps out. Person 1 goes back home to clean up. Person 2 goes back to their space. The humanoids clear the boat. Person 1 walks in a circle around the stage when Person 2 runs up to them and gives them a big hug. Both walk together the rest of the circle and sit down for a picnic. They eat and laugh until they say goodbye. Person two exits stage left. Person one goes to the bar, looks at the stool, looks up, shakes their head no, and then walks across the stage left, searching for person two who isn't there anymore. The humanoids clear the stage, clear the bar stool from the stage. Person one goes to upstage and gives one of the humanoids a hug. They all walk down stage as person one mimes telling the story of this amazing girl. Person two walks across upstage. Person one gets on their knees and does the prayer hands looking up. Person two walks across stage again. Person one gets up and is given a flower from one of the humanoids. Person one throws it stage right. Person two walks out and notices the flower. They pick it up and admire it. Person one notices person two and is in complete shock. Person two goes to leave, but person one catches them and lifts them into their arms. The lights fade into a soft pink over the course of the scene.
Scene 3, feeling loved. The movement of this scene. Person 2 gives person 1 one end of a yellow rope. Person 2 lifts person 1 off the ground using the yellow rope. They tumble into an abstract dance where they experience the phases of an average relationship. But throughout the dance, they never release their end of the rope. As this section winds down, person 1 begins to get wound up in the rope. They fight to escape. But person 2 continues dancing in a way that winds person 1 up. Eventually, person 2 notices what they have done and tries to fix it, but can't. Asterisk. At one point in the dance, they lean back with their full weight, using the rope to hold each other from falling completely. And the lighting in this scene, lights fade into a dark red over the course of the scene.
Scene 4. Destructive conflict. The movement of the scene is person 1 as they are lit up on stage right, staring at person 2 on stage left. Person 2 is silently screaming at person 1. Director can choose to let person 2 actually scream, but it must be meaningless gibberish. Have each person yell when they are unlit. Side note, starts at 8:32 and finishes at 8:51. At 8:51, person 1 unties themselves. Person 1 takes off running across the stage trying to exit stage left. Person 2 takes hold of person 1's hand and redirects their momentum across the stage. Person 1 and person 2 run back across the stage together. Person 1 quickly turns running upstage. This devolves into a battle to control the momentum, where they use each other as well as posts situated on either side of the stage to direct each other's as well as their own momentum. Eventually, person 2 attempts to follow person 1's lead. Lighting. The lights alternate splashing white on the emphasized beats until 8:51. The lights fade in, shifting array of colors.
Scene 5, questioning love. The movement of the scene. Person 1 begins beating the stage in an ape-like fashion. Person 2 jumps back and hurriedly exits upstage center. Person 1 stops beating the stage and begins to silently weep face in hand. Person 1 begins to calm down and meander in a circle around the stage. Lighting. The lights cut to purple.
Scene 6, doubt the self. The movement of the scene. The shapeless figures bring on a bunch of funhouse mirrors. Person 1 continues to walk around the stage trying to look at themselves. But whenever they look into a mirror, that shapeless figure exits the stage along with the mirror. One by one, shapeless figures that have exited the stage return and start circling person 1 from a distance. Performing a dance, they start to get closer and their movement becomes jerky and staggered. When the last shapeless figure joins the group, they change their movement to smooth but quick movement, changing in which direction they are circling person 1, back and forth. Person 1 moves to center stage and stares upstage. Person 1 dramatically turns to face downstage at 13:11. There's a big beat. They begin to start touching their face and examining their body. They take a confident step forward on each beat. This is at 13:27. Person 1 and starts running upstage. They stop, turn to face downstage, then exit stage left. and the lighting is a slow fade to a murky green over the course of the scene.
Scene 7. Moving on. The movement of the scene is shapeless figures start running and dancing across the stage. Shapeless figures stop dancing and fill the stage. Person 1 enters and sits on a bar stool, takes a drink at 14:30ish. Person 2 enters, interacts with someone. Person 2 sees Person 1. They slowly approach Person 1, growing more confident as they go, and Person 2 sits next to Person 1. Person 2 pulls out a frayed red rope from their bag and offers Person 1 the end at 15:20. Person 1, looking away, takes one step. Lighting, the lights fade to a light green and blackout. End of show.
All right.
And that is Forever and Always. So, Skye, shall I switch the screen share off and we'll just discuss now?
Just to reiterate, that's a piece written by Isaac and I.
Okay.
So we are the writers to address.
Yes, so we just have a lovely Brianna saying hi in the chat. Glad to see you here.
Hello. Thanks for coming.
So I would like to start the discussion by saying that, yeah, we acknowledge that this piece is probably a little hard for our audience to understand. It is mostly stage direction and technical terms. Skye and I have both done a lot of writing that is mainly dialogue heavy, and we really want to challenge ourselves as we wrote this piece into looking at how can we manage to write a piece that is interesting without any intelligent dialogue, without relying on our strength of knowing how to communicate. Can we still portray emotions?
Yeah, our goal overall was to portray a relationship between two people purely through the emotions of the people in question. So it wasn't specifically about what the relationship was. It revolved around what the relationship felt like. That's why there's so many examples of different kinds of relationships or different kinds of dates and events, and it's up to the audience to interpret how those actually happened and sort of draw into what the feeling was behind them.
Because we've discussed, I think, Luke was talking about how I'm still getting. Goodness, I'll move you away from my. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say that Luke was saying that, yeah, like a piece like this could possibly benefit still from some dialogue, but then we were discussing whether or not, with the intention of this piece being to portray everything emotionally, whether or not maybe it just requires that level of dedication to fully portray this piece in the right light.
Yeah, and when I gave that note, and it wasn't really a note because I don't think it's a mistake that you didn't put dialogue in there, but I think if there was a little dialogue that it could benefit from, I think it should not be either explicitly emotional or explicitly sort of explicitly about the events that happened to the relationship. I think that the dialogue, like I thought that it might have benefited from some dialogue just to give the actress some business, but like but we can talk about that later.
Would that be in relation to that? Does the gibberish fill that hole, or?
Yeah, it could. I think I guess it's important to I guess like my tendency is to not just say gibberish and just like let that go. Like I'd rather like plan it out and make sure that something happens. But like I have a few questions here and we could talk a little bit about it, but I'd like to hear what, like if you were to develop this, what the production process would be.
And to give some context to the audience, all of the pieces we'll be doing in this series are in the process of being made. None of them are expected. Some may be finished, but none of them are expected to be at a finished state. So there is room to work, and that's the point of the workshop.
Yeah. A lot of, especially as Luke is saying, until we actually get a chance to put it on a stage or try to produce it, it's really difficult to critique it because yeah, like, we just don't know like how the lighting's gonna work out, how say like the red rope, how are we gonna show that if we have the lighting being green all across the stage. So it's definitely a very challenging technical piece as far as theater pieces I know have gone.
Let's move to one of Luke's questions.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I guess yeah, like you already touched on the fact that like so much of I think the meat of like finding the sort of impact of this piece will be in the technical process, whether that be like in, for example, like lighting and sound cues, your recording of Moonlight Sonata, because it's a classical piece in the public domain. Like you can do lots of different takes from lots of different pianists. But also just like, like this is such an actor heavy piece, like, and the kind of approach that you do to like devising and finding where you want that be. This is not a piece where you can just like, where people are just your puppets and you just give them instructions, right? So much of this is, has to live in the like internal life and internal work of the actor at this point, which is anxiety inducing at this point because you don't know how good it's going to be until you start putting money into it. But that's also exciting from an adrenaline standpoint, and that means that the work of the piece and the substance of the piece is closer to the production. If you know that the real essence of the piece is in the work of it, like I get excited by, like camera tests in like the film world, because like you can't just say like, oh, everything's in the story and the dialogue and stuff. It's like, no, it's a moving image on a screen. And I think similarly in theater, like if the meat of the kind of the production is in the work of the production, the production itself, I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
Like closer you can get there, the better.
Like you can't pull the videography out of a movie, just like you can't pull the stage presence out of a theater play.
Yeah, and like like I think in a lot of popular movies now, and have been for a long time, are like very dialogue and script based because it's not very expensive to write a script, and it's quite expensive to reshoot a movie a couple of times. That's an advantage that theater has, is you can rehearse like to like if you were prepared enough, you could do a bunch of tech rehearsals if you wanted to.
Absolutely.
And that's really nice. And I think if the substance of the piece and if everyone's on the same wavelength, the kind of devising process and collaboration process, getting closer to the actual thing rather than being like, oh, I have this divine script,
Right.
Don't get in the way.
Yeah.
I think that's exciting, and that's which like you said, makes it harder to critique now, but
and
gives a lot of potential.
And I think that was part of our process, is like letting ourselves get out of the way.
Yeah.
Understanding that we're writing something that's not necessarily, like, we may not be the ones who put it together. Yeah.
I know for me, it was absolutely the hardest challenge of this piece was learning where that line is to rely on the director and what I want to communicate to the director. Like, this is important. Very much trying to strike that balance. I want it to be a bar scene in certain moments because that way it portrays this loneliness in our current Canadian culture, but also a familiarity. And then, but again, like, leaving that open so that people who are in America or Europe, if they decide to perform this piece, they don't feel alienated from it. That's
And
something that Skye
and
can
we
help me with.
yeah, and we did discuss, like, we spent quite a while discussing whether or not, like, how we would put it together if, say, we were doing so, like what we want the shapeless humanoids to look like or be made of. Um, but ultimately, we didn't really force any of that into the script. It was just like, this is possible, and then moving on. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to use like a gardening metaphor, if you want to use like a farming or gardening metaphor, saying that like a good play is like a piece of fruit, it's like going to a farmer and like you've you've got like good compost and seeds, and the production is like, what do we do with this? You know?
Right.
And I think rather than like giving you an outline plan and full like an instruction booklet this thick,
Mhm.
you've given materials to develop the kind of ecology there. Yeah, this is exciting.
I think that
What was my
I think that
question?
sums up what we wanted.
Yeah, I think we have summed up the majority of what we want to discuss about this piece. I haven't seen any comments yet from the audience about any particular aspect. Uh, they're still welcome to as we go. We will still be doing another interview later on, so that I can continue to ask and discuss. But in the meantime, I think it might be time to wrap up this section.
All right. Absolutely. One thing we did want to do before we go on to our break is, given that here in Canada it is July the 1st, which is Canada Day, we wanted to acknowledge the fact that there have been an overwhelming amount of kids that have been found in unmarked graves from past residential schools, and we don't have all the knowledge to talk about this, and we don't want to be the ones to insert our voices. We just want to give a moment of silence to reflect on that. Thank you for taking that time with us. If anybody needs resources to refer to, we put them in the description. Feel free to go there for the educational resources, as we don't want to be the ones to tell you or anyone what people in the Indigenous community are experiencing right now, because we don't know, and we can't know.
And especially with the Canadian history that we have been taught versus what we are finding out through these resources that we've started to research on our own time. And we want to thank the members of the Indigenous community who have reached out to us to give us these resources. It's just super helpful, and we're so thankful for all the energy it takes for them to have, but to speak out for their own cause.
Yes, thank you.
So I am going to just head into the intermission section, and we'll start up the interview right when we get back.
So this section is a little bit different than what we just went through. That was the workshop of the piece itself. Now, generally, we would talk about an artist. We're going to be mostly interviewing myself, but it'll also revolve around the channel as a whole.
Absolutely. So yeah, Luke will be getting an interview when he appears on his workshop piece. I don't remember your date.
I think September.
September. Yeah, September 1st, we'll have Luke on. For now, we decided to choose either myself or Skye, but as Skye is kind of our theater director, we're going to be focusing on her today. So we'll start off with, yes, Skye, what is your involvement in theater?
Well, I actually went to school for theater. I got a Bachelor of Arts, Dramatic Arts, and I've been mostly a purveyor of like viewing theater. I haven't really had an opportunity to perform as much as I'd like, but Isaac and I have been writing for years together, and my interest in theater sort of evolved over my experience in university to sort of see the writing experience as more of a beneficial section of that. Um, I've always wanted to sort of make a difference with theater and make theater that impacts people. Um, and it's a little harder to do that from a performance point. Not that it's impossible. Many performers influence people every day, all the time, but in the writing, you get to tell the story a little more.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just notes, say that college is you find very important to your creative process.
I find it important to my personal process. I don't think it's necessarily necessary. I don't think it's necessary for the creative process in general or to be a creative person. People are creating all the time, but it benefited my process and helped me find out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be.
Absolutely. And I also want to comment, yeah, I've definitely seen some performers who are able to use their director and their improvised moments to speak out in some personal shows. One I come immediately to mind is a beautiful woman on stage. I can't remember her name. She actually called out people for having cell phones in the theater. So again, small little things that actors can do. So how long have you been in the business?
Well, I've been interested in theater forever, ever since I performed back in kindergarten. Um, I've always been a performer, always been louder than I should be, uh, and and awkward and weird. Um, I do things that are fun. I do things because they're fun, and theater was always something I found very enjoyable. Performance and being something different, making things up, imagination. All those things have always been exciting to me. So I guess you could say I've been a performer forever. But most of my performance sort of started in high school. I did some shows with my high school for 3 of the 4 or 5 years I was there, and then I did some shows outside with local theaters as well while I was out there. And then when I went off to school, I did a lot less performing because I was working on the craft. And then I came home and I've worked for theaters in more in like the audience development areas. But beyond that, like I've always been involved in the theater in some way.
So I think you kind of touched on this. So like you would say your favorite part of being involved in theater is your ability to be uh, socially progressive in a writing position.
It's mostly about having an impact, having some level of impact. It doesn't have to be any specific impact. I identify as somebody within the LGBTQ community, and I myself am trans. So there's a lot of feelings of necessity to better the experience that we have as a community. But ultimately, I want to make people's lives better. I want to improve the experience of life for people, which seems like a huge goal, and I try to compartmentalize it and make it a little softer, you know.
Honestly, I agree with that in a lot of ways. And it's amazing that you are able to be a part of that in this community. Uh, what is a special moment you can think of that really hooked you onto this art form? Is this something in kindergarten, or do you think it was more high school and college that really got you into you?
There's been several moments in my life where I sort of, always there's peaks and valleys in the arts, and there's always little pick me ups and reminders that this is something I like doing. Uh, I wouldn't say I have like a moment, right? I don't have that shining like uh, magical moment where everything changed and I became an artist. I've always been doing art, but there are people and moments in my life where little things happen that sort of keep me going, push me forward, give me a little bit of inspiration, wake me up to how important it is. And sometimes it's just something I saw, I didn't know what it was, and I got excited about it. And sometimes I get excited because I don't know what it is. It's awesome to learn something new.
I can definitely relate to that. Uh, and have you thought of switching to any other art forms? Like I know Luke is kind of more of film, and you've talked about kind of the difference between performing and writing. So would you say that yeah, you kind of did make a switch from the performing art form to writing, or would you just say what would you say about different art forms, I guess?
I think the medium of performance is all about like there's so many different mediums of art that you can call different things, but they're kind of the same fundamentally. It's sort of the way a creative mind is expressed. Um, and so I've done painting, I've done drawing, um, I've written poems, we've written plays, I've performed. It's all about getting those creative energies out of you. Um,
Absolutely.
and generally, I find the medium that I like to do that. Like I'm a big fan of improv. I mean, anybody who watches this channel has seen me do it, and uh, I think that's sort of the perfect blend of the performance writer in me. That's almost the direction I really like to go, because it's so perfectly fits into what my creative mind wants to do. um,
Yeah, it's great to hear. Definitely, I think that's why we've put improv as such an important part onto this channel, because of your beautiful love for it. And so here's a really big question I have for you, for this channel. What is your dream project?
my dream project for this channel. Oh, um, that is a huge question. You're right. Um, I think well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to film stuff that is specifically made to be filmed. A lot of what we do is just circumstance of the medium of publication, where we're publishing it on a digital medium, so it has to be recorded. Um, but I'd like to do stuff that was written specifically to be recorded, such as sketches, little sketches. Um, I could see us moving into like series or something along those lines, big films. I don't know. It could go anywhere, especially because we picked this medium that's digital. Um, it feels right to create something that's designed for the medium. Um, but as in terms of like big projects, um, uh, I would say there's a lot that goes into sort of deciding what a big project would be. I think we're already doing a big project. Just the channel launch in itself is a big project.
Oh,
Um, and it's bigger than you'd expect. And the launching of Tap was the big project, you know. And now just keeping it going is the goal.
I think. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. I think we've definitely talked about that a lot, where with our friends, about how this really is what you and I have had as a dream for a very long time, is to have this platform, to have a creative force in our community and be able to speak about it and have people listen to it.
Mhm.
So then, favorite project you've worked on in the past?
In the past, honestly, the fact that when we started writing together, that felt like a big boost. You know, I just finished. Well, I mean, I was still in school,
Yeah,
but I was just finishing up, and we sort of like established this thing that we thought would just be like a one-off writing project that has just kept snowballing.
yeah,
And it feels like my favorite project because it was a big step of just saying like I'm gonna make this happen. You know, I want to create, and I'm just gonna do it.
yeah,
And I mean, I think we're all creatives. I think we can all relate to that feeling of just that moment you say, I'm just gonna make something. I don't care how it ends up. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care if it's bad. And it at first it was bad. We've done some really bad stuff.
some real,
uh,
real
in the movie.
novice pieces have been written by us.
Yeah, but the important thing is that we kept going. We stuck with it, and now we're doing something bigger. You know.
So I'm going to skip a few questions because we've kind of already answered them. Let's go to, how do you balance work with theater?
Part of it is for a while I didn't. um, I was bad at both. Um, I was bad at managing my time, but immediately it became obvious to me. If any of you've watched the channel for quite a while, we did a series while back. We've taken it off the channel, but it was skits that we were just pumping out during COVID. Um, that were they were hard. They were rough. And we were pushing through them because we wanted to release on a regular schedule. And part of managing time came down to realizing how to manage our expectations. Um, right? It was just the two of us, and we didn't have any. We didn't even have the ability to meet people in order to have resources to film well or to get what we needed to get together. So we just kind of plowed through it full steam, and it ran us right into the ground. Um, but now we're doing something we've learned to manage our expectations by calming down, doing something a little less labor intensive. You know, we were spending the whole week editing and filming, and and then releasing the video and jumping into the next. It was tiring.
Oh, yeah. And I think even Luke, you were there for some of the beginning of that, weren't you? When you were roommates, right? With Skye? Yes, you were
Hmm.
there. I think the 48-hour writing session we did, where I came up for the weekend.
Yeah.
So we just sat in the same house on the couch, and we would run up to Luke and the other roommates, just be like, "Hey, do you guys mind listening to this? We have a scene that we just wrote. Get your opinions." So we lived, breathed uh, theater whenever we weren't tied down by it being at our work.
Mhm.
So definitely understand what you mean by you didn't really balance it at first.
Yeah. Well, even like Isaac and I almost didn't meet up unless we were doing theater stuff. Like we didn't really socialize with each other. It was always a business call.
I see.
And now we've got a little bit better of a balance just in our social lives with each other.
Mhm.
Uh, and yes, Luke's been a great help throughout this whole process.
Oh, yeah.
Always there to listen and read through our stuff. So We appreciate that, Luke.
What's your favorite character and how have they inspired you?
My favorite character. Uh, are you referring to a specific medium, like
I
in theater?
wasn't. I was thinking more so just fictional, I guess. Fictional character in a piece that you've performed or written.
Um, it, Inspirations for like my favorite character that I've written. Well, we wrote a piece called Sydney's Place,
Hmm.
and Sydney is the main character. Of course, I picked the main character, but I when we wrote this character, it was very much about my a lot of it started with my experience, um, but of course, Sydney is now a much more complicated character. Um, but the original character was very much tied to me, and I guess I took some inspiration of how to do this from that piece, and I don't want to get too much into it because I'm sure many people watching this have no idea what that is. Uh, so I don't want to go into depth, but the
Okay.
character struggles with establishing and keeping a business going, um, and organizing their their feelings and thoughts, um, in their their dream endeavor versus their working life. Um, and I felt that when we were writing that because I was sort of in limbo, not knowing where I was going to go. I was fresh out of school by then, and I had no idea where where my life was going. So I took a
Absolutely.
lot of inspiration from that.
Makes a lot of sense. There any other final question? Are there any other highlights of your career, as short as your career really has been in some ways, that you would like to talk about here, or anything I guess you'd want to plug before we wrap up and say goodbye to our audience?
I mean, other than the channel itself, I don't have much to plug. You know, subscribe, like, comment, ring the bell. Um, you know what it is. All of those things. Other than that, we have an Instagram, Facebook. They're all under Taking a Peek, and they're linked in the description. Um, we also have an email you can contact if you need to get a hold of us. If you want to submit your stories and stuff, there is an
That's in the
email.
description.
Yes, also in the description. Other than that, the highlights are happening. They're happening right now, and you're watching them.
And
So
we're so thankful for everyone who takes
yes.
their time to come watch us. It's honest, every view counts at this point. We
Mhm.
notice each and every one of you. We're so
Yes.
thankful to have people interacting with us. The whole purpose of us doing this theater is to have a relationship with our audience and to
Mhm.
grow. Very thankful.
Absolutely. I guess that pretty well winds us down.
That's
Um, we've got a little bit more time. If anybody has an extra question or two
so
beyond
just
that,
Brianna hanging out with us.
uh, beyond that, I think just we appreciate having you. Um, we're not even exaggerating when we say that we notice every single view. Like we're at that point in our channel where it's very obvious to us when somebody watches, and seeing just how many people are tuning into every video, even for a short time, it means a lot. Um, it means a lot. This was a project that was a long time in the making,
Oh yeah,
and
3 years.
and it's good to see a little bit of interaction with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so check us improv out on 6 p.m. every Saturday. Our
Mhm.
workshops are monthly, on the first of every month at 6 p.m. as well, just to keep that clear. Uh, Next month, we have the Corey McDermott, which we just released an improv episode with. So check that out. And